following the allocation of 32 million rand for disaster relief material and further 5.6 million rand, which was added to the traditional leaders grant. Vote 5, with regards to the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Land and Environmental Affairs, its budget is reduced from 1,152 million rand to 1,132 million rand. Vote 6, we are mindful of the importance of the Nkomazi Special Economic Zone, hence a portion of the funds previously allocated to this program will be rescheduled based on the implementation capacity of the department in the 2021-2022 financial year. The budget of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism will therefore be reduced from 1,108 million rand to 1,082 million rand. Vote 7, the budget of the Department of Education will decrease by 50 million rand, funds which are being rescheduled to the 2021-2022 financial year. The baseline for the year ending 31 March 2021 is therefore set at 22,202 million rand. Vote 8, the Department of Public Works, Roads and Transport will also see a decrease in the budget from 4,697 million rand to 4,627 million rand, mainly due to the delays experienced in the implementation of the parliamentary village. Vote 9, the budget for the Department of Community Safety, Security and Liaison is reduced by 8.4 million rand from traffic college funds from 1,430 million rand to 1,422 million rand. Vote 10, as alluded earlier on the effect of lockdown, especially in the construction industry, mainly infrastructure projects were affected. The part of the funds that were allocated to the implementation of Bethal, New Middleburg and Mapulaneng hospitals projects will be rescheduled to the 2021-22 financial year, thus reducing the current budget of the Department of Health from 16,154 million rand to 16,004 million rand. Vote 11, the budget of the Department of Culture, Sports and Recreation is reduced by 55 million rand from 515 million rand to 459 million rand. Vote 12, we are also proposing to reduce the baseline of the Department of Social Development from 1,762 million rand to 1,757 million rand. Vote 13, the Department of Human Settlement has consistently displayed positive spending trends on housing delivery programs in the country. Accordingly, 138 million rand has been added to the budget to continue implementing its social housing programs that fulfills the Freedom Charter's ideal of sustainable housing settlements for all. The department will also reschedule 120 million rand meant for various infrastructure projects to the next financial year. The effect of this is that the budget will increase from 1,540 million rand to 1,558 million rand. In conclusion, Honourable Speaker, we will continue to make a case for adherence to the fiscal policy. We will appeal to departments to help us maintain a sustainable budget structure which is critical to preserving the provincial budget process and help us to realize a desirable societal impact of the public finances. I have the honor to table the third adjustment appropriation bill, which adjusts the 2020-21 adjusted fiscal framework from 52,183 million rand to 51,782 million rand. And this adjustment appropriation speech for perusal by the esteemed members. I thank you.
Thank you for the well-delivered speech. The Mpumalanga Third Adjustments Budget Speech 2020-2021. The electronic copies, the Mpumalanga Third Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2021, stand referred to the Portfolio Committee on Premier's Office, Finance, Economic Development and Tourism for consideration and report back to the House. The Secretary shall read the second order of the day.
Order number 2, introduction and tabling of the Mpumalanga Appropriation Bill 2021.
I now call upon the MSc for Finance, Economic Development and Tourism, the Honorable P.V. Mkachwa, to deliver the introductory speech and table the Mpumalanga Appropriation Bill 2021.
Thank you once more, Honorable Speaker. Let me again greet the honorable members, starting with your good self and the Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Premier, Refilwe Mthweni-Tsipane, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, and the Deputy Chief Whip, the colleagues in the Executive, and members of the Provincial Legislature, all Executive Mayors and the Mayoral Committee members on Finance, the Director General, the Head Official, and and all heads of departments, Chairperson of the House of Traditional Leaders, the leadership of business, organized labor, faith-based organization, and society, civil society of the Mpumalanga province. Honorable Speaker, COVID-19 has devastating effects on life as we know it. It has disrupted the norm, and we have found ourselves having to adapt quickly as a people. We must commend the stewardship of the democratic government under President Ramaphosa for the decisive policy responses designed to mitigate the impact of the virus. Honorable Speaker, Amilcar Cabral once made a profound statement that always remember that the people are not fighting for ideas, nor for what is in men's minds. The people fight and accept the sacrifices demanded by the struggle in order to gain material advantages, to live better and in peace, to benefit from progress and for the better future of their children. He further stated that national liberation, the struggle against colonialism, the construction of peace, progress, and independence are hollow words devoid of any significance unless they can be translated into a real improvement of living conditions. The statement posited by Cabral is in sync with the overall thinking of the provincial government that the programs we are rolling out ought to talk to the real improvement of the living conditions of the citizens of Mpumalanga. Honorable Speaker, we must commend the stewardship of the democratic government under President Ramaphosa for the decisive policy response designed to mitigate the impact of the virus. Accordingly, during the Great Lockdown, the government introduced a package of policy interventions aimed at insulating the mostly hit by the crisis through discretionary policies like tax rebates and release of social and economic relief measures to mitigate the impact of the lockdowns. In the context of Mpumalanga, the Honorable Premier Mthweni-Tsipane led the Provincial Command Council with decisiveness in ensuring that the social relief programs cushion the vulnerable communities against the COVID-19 shock. The measures became more pronounced when they included the underwriting of bank loans from commercial banks to business, rejingling or readjusting the 2020 budget to shift money to healthcare, increasing social grants, and providing food vouchers and packages. We are tabling a budget aimed at dealing with fiscal pressures faced by the government and contribute to fiscal consolidation measures announced by Minister Mboweni in his budget speech of February 2021. In terms of the economic landscape and outlook, Madam Speaker, let me briefly address some key aspects of the economic landscape and outlook to guide us moving forward. We are tabling the 2021 MTF main appropriation following the devastating health and economic crisis caused by COVID-19 worldwide. Significant economic impact has already occurred across the globe due to reduced productivity, loss of life, business closures, trade disruption, and dissemination of the tourism industry, to mention but a few. The huge impact is illustrated in the South African economic landscape, which contracted by 7% last year, which was the worst figure for the country in almost 100 years. COVID-19 and the lockdown have particularly affected our provincial economy on many fronts. The following can be highlighted: the disastrous impact on the tourism industry. Global tourism suffered its worst year on record in 2020, with international arrivals dropping by 74%, according to the latest data from the United Nations World Tourism Organization. Data collected by the Department of Home Affairs up to December 2020 shows that foreign arrivals into South Africa declined by 71% in 2020 compared with 2019. Mpumalanga's loss in foreign arrivals for 2020 is estimated at approximately 73%. The loss in total tourism spend in the province for 2020 is estimated at 81.2% of the 2019 value, and the loss in bed nights of 2020 is estimated at 62%. Negative impact on SMMEs, including the informal sector. Many of the job losses in Mpumalanga came from the SMME and informal economy sector. It is estimated that informal sector's share of provincial job losses in 2020 was almost 30% of the total number of jobs lost in the province. Huge job losses in most industries, especially construction. The latest quarterly labor force survey of Stats SA shows that our province recorded a net job losses of 96,382 last year. The job losses in construction alone were more than 30,000. Mpumalanga's expanded unemployment rate increased to 46.4% at the end of Q4 of 2020, which was the third highest amongst the 9 provinces. Honorable Speaker, the above is not a good picture at all, but there's always hope. According to the Global Economic Prospects World Bank report released in January 2021, the global economy appears to be recovering from one of its deepest recessions and beginning a subdued recovery. Minister Mboweni indicated that global growth is expected to rebound to 5.5% this year. Sub-Saharan Africa is forecasted to grow by 3.2% and South Africa by 3.3%. We are expecting a provincial growth rate of more than 3% this year. Key industries such as mining, manufacturing, trade and tourism, transport and communications, as well as finance, can even experience growth rates of more than 3% in 2021. This is undoubtedly good news for our province. High growth normally means job opportunities, which will impact positively on poverty and inequalities in our province. Government, households, and industry all need to embrace and change a changed economic landscape while protecting the most vulnerable. We will need to implement policies that allow capital, labor, skills, and innovation to shift to new purposes to build a greener and stronger post-COVID-19 economic environment. Change is especially critical now when our fiscal position is severely stretched by the pandemic and other drivers of long-term growth have weakened. In terms of the 2021 medium-term expenditure framework, Honorable Speaker, it is worth reminding ourselves also about the state of the economy and the fiscus as outlined by the Minister of Finance on the 24th of February 2021. Over the next 3 years, the spending framework for the province includes expenditure reductions of 16.4 billion due to the equitable share and conditional grants reductions in the main. The provincial budget is expected to decrease by 3,802 million rand, or 6.2% in the 2021-22 financial year. 7 billion and 74 million rand in 2022-2023, and 5 billion 374 million in the 2023-2024 fiscal year. This was done as a response to the fiscal consolidation program. Most of the cuts are on the compensation of employees. The sources of the budget for 2021-22, the total allocated budget for 2021-22 is 53,576,427,000 rand. Almost 80% of this budget is transfer receipts from the provincial equitable share, 16.5% from conditional grants, and 3.5% from own revenue and other receipts. Collection efficiency has never been as important as it is now, as it will cushion the budget reductions. Own revenue collection was greatly affected by COVID-19. The province's own revenue target was revised down by 209 million rand in November 2020 because of the negative impact of COVID-19. The province projects to collect 1.7 billion rand for the 2021-22 financial year, which is hardly enough to offset the impact of the budget cuts. In terms of the spending priorities for 2021-22, I will now highlight some of the spending priorities as endorsed by the Executive Council. In terms of the social cluster, the social cluster is allocated 42,560 million rand, which translates to 80% of the total provincial budget. The social sector departments provide essential services to the poor through targeted interventions such as social protection, public education, and healthcare, and advance the social cohesion and unity of all our people around the common constitutional directive of protection of human rights. Education. Education has an influence of immense proportions in our efforts to fight the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, particularly in improving the literacy, skills, and employability of our people. To this end, 22,336 million rand is allocated to the Department of Education to fund, amongst other priorities, collaborative efforts within the social cluster to focus on early childhood development, curriculum enrichment programs to ensure that our learners stay in school and are in class on time learning, and school infrastructure to broaden access to education and to improve the learning environment. Included in this amount is a special allocation of 206.9 million to gradually entrench the e-learning throughout the system. Social development is one of the leading departments in dealing with the social impact of COVID-19 within our communities. The department receives 1,840 million rand to provide alternative care and support to vulnerable children and the elderly. GBVF victim support, implement social relief of distressed programs, and increase capacity in the form of additional social workers. Amongst others, a special allocation of 20.2 million rand is included to the baseline of the department for provision of dignity packs to needy learners in our schools. Included in the allocation is 11 million to operationalize the Swartfontein Treatment Center and one more youth development center in Bombela. The health, in terms of health, the health of society determines the level of productivity and resourcefulness of citizens to positively contribute to economic growth. To this end, the second largest component of the budget of 16,204 million rand is allocated to the Department of Health for coordinating services across the care continuum and reorienting the system towards primary health, enhancing leadership and governance in the health sector to improve the quality of care and improving the quality of health services in public facilities. Of this budget, 150 million rand is rescheduled from the 2020-21 financial year towards the continuing construction of health infrastructure, particularly in Mapulaneng and Middelburg hospitals, and the completion of the Petal Hospital. Culture, sports, and recreation. 622 million rand is allocated to the Department of Culture, Sports and Recreation to promote cultural diversity and enhance cultural tourism through the support of community-based initiatives. Coordinate marketing platforms for creative industry products to create jobs and empower learners and communities with knowledge through the supply of new library material in public libraries. Included in this budget is 18 million to finalize the projects of library information management systems and 50 million which was rescheduled from the previous financial year towards the High Altitude Center. In terms of the human settlements, the Department of Human Settlement receives 1,557 million rand to plan, coordinate and facilitate the creation of integrated and sustainable human settlements in our province. In addition to this human settlements mandate, the department is funded to provide schools and communities, boreholes and related infrastructure. 95 million rand is rescheduled from the 2021 financial year. To that effect, 25 million rand is allocated to continue with the work of bulk infrastructure at the parliamentary village. In terms of the economy, investment and employment, the share of the economy, investment and employment cluster is 7,542 million rand, which is 14% of the provincial budget this year. Economic development and tourism is allocated a total budget of 1,354 million rand to finalize and coordinate the Mpumalanga Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan implementation by all stakeholders. The budget includes 763,098,000 rand, which will be transferred to provincial public entities, namely Mpumalanga Economic Growth Agency, the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency, and the Mpumalanga Economic Regulator, to fulfill their economic and developmental mandate. 341 million rand is allocated for the continuing work on the Mpumalanga International Fresh Produce Market. 10 million rand is to collaborate with other stakeholders to unlock the potential of green economy. 20 million rand is to tighten economic regulation and improve revenue generation. 20 million rand is allocated to Nkomazi Special Economic Zone for finalizing the state-owned company's corporate strategy, the appointment of a governance structure and daily operational work of the entity. Agriculture, rural development, land and environmental affairs. In terms of agriculture, agriculture plays an important role in the economy, as seen with its performance during the devastating times of COVID-19 and lockdown. The Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Land and Environmental Affairs will receive 1,234 million rand to continue to support emerging farmers and key provincial departmental initiatives in the agricultural sector, for example, the Fortune 40 programs and Zonda Indlala, amongst others. Public Works, Roads and Transport. The budgeted allocation to the Department of Public Works, Roads and Transport is 4,952 million rand. Included in this budget are funds to deal with the effects of the recent heavy rains brought about by the tropical storm Elios. The department is also allocated 16 million rand to procure specialized vehicles to repair potholes and other road works. A special allocation of 50 million rand is allocated to the department for the maintenance and renovations at KwaMhlanga Government Complex. 50 million rand towards the parliamentary village that was rescheduled from the previous financial year is also added to the baseline for the department. Governance and administration. The remaining 6% of the budget, which translates to 3,473 million rand, is shared by the departments in the governance and administration cluster. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs is allocated 731 million rand to better coordinate local government and traditional affairs work. Included in the budget is 200 million rand to collaborate with other national and provincial departments such as the Department of Correctional Services, Department of Defense and Military Veterans, Public Works, Roads and Transport to repair infrastructural damages caused by recent heavy rains in the province. A special allocation of 5.6 million rand has also been made towards Traditional Authorities Grant. Community Safety, Security and Liaison. The Department of Community Safety, Security and Liaison will be allocated 1,500,000,000 rand to implement key deliverables that enable the safety and security of the citizens and road users in the province. Much is expected from this department in terms of fighting the scourge of crime, which manifests itself in many ways, especially focusing on gender-based violence and femicide. Provincial Treasury, the Provincial Treasury will receive 481 million rand, largely for general oversight of all departments, municipalities and public entities, internal audit, supply chain management, as well as support for transversal financial systems. Working together with National Treasury, COGTA and other financial institutions, more hands-on support has been given to all public sector institutions in the past financial year, and we will continue to do so over the 2021 MTEF. The key focus areas include improved audit outcomes across the province, as well as on-budget spending, and for the province to remain cash positive and grow reserves even though economic conditions remains very harsh. Office of the Premier, 383 million rand is allocated to the Office of the Premier to provide leadership to the provincial administration, including monitoring and evaluation of the performance of state institutions. 90 million rand is allocated for the implementation of the Youth Fund, noting that the Office of the Premier has taken much time to do thorough planning in this regard. It is an urgent priority of the government and should assist with alleviating challenges faced by young people. We call on all sectors to support this program qualitatively and quantitatively. Provincial Legislature. The Provincial Legislature is allocated 376 million rand to execute its mandate of lawmaking, providing oversight on the executive and deepening democracy. Included in this allocation is 8.5 million rand for voter education in preparation for the municipal elections this year. Prudent financial management. Madam Speaker, the deep budget cuts call for our administration to be efficient, effective and economical when handling its business. To this end, cost curtailment measures remains in place. The Provincial Treasury will issue a guiding circular in this regard for the 2021-22 financial year. Now more than ever before, we must stretch the value of the rand. We must get and achieve more with much less given the state of our fiscus. The new norm has first introduced us to remote working, and we have had to leap into a new technology and 4IR age much faster than we had anticipated. As custodians of financial operating systems, we have availed the tools for virtual engagements for all departments and will continue to do so over the MTEF. This has come with some connectivity challenges across all regions. We are, however, working with the Department of Telecommunications, SITA, and the Office of the Premier to find a lasting solution hereon. I want to call upon my colleagues in the Executive Council to ensure zero tolerance to unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure in the departments they lead. We must be resolute in putting in place systems that will prevent any acts of corruption. We must commit to insulate the people's purse from anyone who might want to pillage and steal from the people. We support the implementation of the amendments to the Public Audit Act by the Auditor General holistically. We will be cooperating with the office to ensure that every cent is used for the intended purpose. In terms of municipal finance, the municipality's financial sustainability is the shared duty and responsibility of the government, civil society, business community, and all citizens. We will develop a mechanism to identify municipalities at risk and to coordinate tailor-made support interventions. Together with COGTA and SALGA, The Provincial Treasury will support 5 municipalities, which are Lekwa, Govan Mpegi, Msuwa Lekwa, Emalahleni, and Tabacheu, on the implementation of their financial recovery plans. We applaud COGTA, our sister department, for finalizing a working relationship with DPSA on the establishment of a PMU to enhance its own capacity to effectively support all municipalities. Our focus will be on supporting the revenue management value chain, supply chain management, improving financial governance and accountability, program planning, and project implementation. In supporting to address audit outcomes, we will also support municipalities to get the foundational pillars right to stabilize financial administration. We appeal to all municipalities to implement proper internal controls and standard operating procedures to eliminate the root causes of the negative audit findings. Part of the work that we will do with municipalities include focusing on improving the oversight and control environment in municipalities, guiding municipalities to budget correctly, spend accordingly to plans, and very important, to account accurately for all spending, amongst others. Capacitating of oversight structures such as the audit committees and internal audit units through initiatives undertaken jointly with National Treasury. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, I would like to thank the Premier, the Honorable Premier, Honorable Refilwe Tsipane Mtsweni, for your leadership throughout the process of preparing this spending plan. My sincere gratitude to all my colleagues in the Budget and Finance Committee and the Executive Council, as well as the chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee on the Premier's Office, Finance, Economic Development and Tourism. We are indeed indebted to the leadership of the Acting Director General and the Head of the Provincial Treasury, Ms. Gugu Mashiteng, and her team for working tirelessly to ensure that we have a credible budget to present to the people of Mpumalanga. Lastly but not least, I would like to thank the African National Congress for entrusting us with this responsibility to steer the electoral mandate on behalf of the people of Mpumalanga. Honorable Speaker, I hereby, on behalf of the Executive Council, table the following budget documents for consideration. The Provincial Budget Speech for 2021-2022, the Appropriation Bill for 2021-2022, the estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure for 2021 MTEF. I thank you.
Thank you for the well-delivered speech. The Mpumalanga Provincial Main Appropriation Budget Speech 2021-2022, the electronic copies, Mpumalanga Appropriation Bill 2021, Mpumalanga Estimates of Provincial Revenue and Expenditure for 2021-2022 stand referred to the Portfolio Committee on Premier's Office, Finance, Economic Development and Tourism for consideration and report back to the House. The Secretary shall read the third order of the day.
Order number 3, reports of the Select Committee on Legislature Oversight. 3.1, third quarterly performance report for the 2020-2021 financial year, Mpumalanga Provincial Legislature. 3.2, annual performance report for the 2019-20 financial year, Mpumalanga Provincial Legislature.
I now call upon the Chairperson of the Select Committee on Legislature Oversight, Chief Whip Honorable F.V. Mlombo, to table these reports.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to table this report, the two reports as presented, for consideration by this August House. Thank you.
I am informed that there is no debate on these reports. Now the question before the House is whether we agree to adopt these reports as tabled by the Chief Whip, Honorable F.V. Mlombo. Agreed to? As so agreed. That brings us to the end of today's business. You are all requested to remain standing at your places until the procession has left the chamber. The House is now adjourned until Thursday, the 25th of March, 2021, at 10 o'clock in this very same chamber.
All rise.